Great. So I'm just going to do a brief round of intros with everybody and introduce myself, and then we'll get started. My name is Kat. I'm a traditional artist, and I do head of community at Block Party. And a lot of my art I make traditionally, but sell digitally as an NFT. Why don't you go ahead?
I'm Max. I'm one part of Inevitable Futures. We do art and technology. This is one of our products. We do a Cipher Watch, which is a NFT wearable. And today, I think I'm excited to talk about products like that, linking digital to physical. Looking forward to it.
My name is Vladislav Ginzburg, also at Block Party. I'm the co-founder and CEO. Block Party has been around since 2017 and has done a lot of great experiments with linking physical and digital NFTs with image recognition.
Awesome. I'm Evan Vandenberg. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Dibs. So we specialize in tokenizing high-value physical assets, largely collectibles. To date, it's been a lot of fractionalizing them using smart contracts and having a liquid secondary market for them, and working towards building a regulated bridge to make sure these things are available on any blockchain.
All right, cool. Yeah, my name is Michael Dorner. I'm with Twigitals, and we are a technology provider for linking physical products to NFTs through NFC technology with chips, cryptographic chips. So I'm bringing some 20-plus years experience in cryptography and chips to the blockchain. This is what we do.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. So just a quick reminder, if you do not know what digital goods are or physical goods are, this is probably not the panel for you. But if you do, you're in the right place. So let's just get started. I'm going to ask you all this and then just go down the line, starting with Max here. As Web3 enters further into entertainment products, how do you think it will shape the toys of the future and the products of the future that we all see and use?
Well, I think the most exciting thing for me is really artists getting paid for their work, artists getting discovered. There's so much great work out there, and what I've seen with Web3 is that people are able to keep the ability of art being shared extremely widely, copied all the time, but you still get paid. You have some value that you can realize as an artist, and not all art is digital. And we've seen a lot of this explode with sort of fully digital art, and I'm particularly interested in physical collectibles, wearables, to sort of enter into the same kind of ecosystem. And I think it's going to be really interesting because the economics are very different, because copying costs more of physical objects than digital ones. And so I think for us it's particularly interesting because we're sort of just creating projects to experiment with that and try something out, see how that happens, see what works and what doesn't. But I think we're just at the beginning of all of this, so it's exciting to me.
I share a value ethic with Max. I absolutely love seeing artists get paid and get paid fairly, which is one of my favorite things about seeing the absolute explosion pre-NFTs of contemporary artists making toys. I think Cause was really the artist that championed that, and I come from the traditional art world, and a lot of gallerists would have told Cause, don't do that. You're going to tank your market by making low-cost toys. And Cause was the one person to say, why? Why would that tank my value? And you see a lot of artists making these physical goods, these toys, and it really is a wonderful thing because they have so many fans that love their work and yet are priced out from six-figure paintings. So now you're approaching a whole new collector base with a $100, maybe $500 toy. Now, even if the price point is 3 digits and not 6 digits, and your collector isn't some crazy high net worth individual, it still matters to the collector that what they're buying is authentic and real. And there is, as much as there are fake paintings in the world, there are fake Cause toys. There are fake toys of lots of artists that do that kind of work. So when we think about putting things in the blockchain, it's about authenticity, it's about ownership, and it's about really creating the provenance behind the work. So with Block Party, we're supporting artists not only by giving them the tools to mint NFTs in digital sense, but link them with their physical counterparts.
Yeah, and you guys touched on, obviously a key point with making sure the artists are rewarded for their work. I'll take this a bit of a different direction. We worked, Amazon's an investor, mostly through their media arm. We work with a lot of the large IP holders. We'll spare names for now, but it's so clear that this is actually starting to impact decision-making on how they make consumer products, particularly around collectibles. But I think the easy kind of first wave of some of this is you can take things directly from a TV show, from a movie, from something of fandom, right? We'll call it movie props, everything down to, ticketing. There's a really wide spectrum of what we're seeing from a physical perspective, right? To keep it within that vein. Obviously, digital is incredible and it, ubiquitously available across the globe. But I do think you're going to start to see things from your movies given back to the fans that bought tickets that are really there. And there's so much, right? There's hundreds, thousands of things from each of these, shows, whether it's scripts, you can insert concept here, but I think you're starting to see them be more than willing to take those things and find a really interesting way to kind of activate that globally, but also in the sense of, playing into their Web3 strategy. So I think you're seeing it on the high-end scale, but I think, another piece of this, whether it's toys or other types of merchandise, is funding movies, artists, concepts, right, in the entertainment space by letting actual fans kind of be a part of that, right? Whether it's, equity and revenue, that's a whole other conversation, but at least you get a piece, right? And, crowdfunding's been around for a while, but I think you can do something far more interesting, far more engaging for the fan if you look at it through a different lens where, hey, if I'm going to buy a movie ticket already, I'll buy it now, right? I'm happy to actually pay twice as much if I, can be a part of this whole thing. So I'll leave it at that.
I think pretty much everything is said already, but one thing I want to add is talk about artists and art. What we do also at Digitals is when we work with artists, we add the NFC technology to their piece of art to just make sure that it's authentic, but it also adds it's a way of future income for them, because every time they sell the physical art and new NFTs generated, for example, or the NFTs sold in a secondary market, there is a future income for all the artists. So I really love this idea, and it's a really big game changer, I think, to what we've had before. Because before you had this one piece of physical art that's been sold, and that's it. That's it for the artist. So there's a bright future, I think, for that field, and all the other stuff. I mean, it's been said before, merchandising and all that stuff. So it's we're just at the very beginning of all the possibilities that we can do, combining physical and the digital world. So yeah.
Just keeping the questions right on you. I know you all work blending this physical and digital reality together for the futures, but what are some of the challenges that we see in this space of keeping those things tethered together so that you don't have this disconnect between this physical good and its digital counterparty and them separating over time?
Wow. Well, we're trying to tackle that question for years now. So that's exactly what we're trying to solve, to answer this question. How do you connect a physical item, no matter what it is, forever with the blockchain or the NFT space or the metaverse or whatever? So we think that technology obviously is the answer, a big part of the answer. And it has to be secure. This is why for our purposes, we use cryptographic chips. And it just starts to evolve into new possibilities. Right now, we scan a tag, someone that's in your shoe or in your sweater or in your piece of art or something. But in the future, for example, we could add, we have a customer that has a gin bottle. This bottle of gin has two status. So scan it first, and you will actually see the NFT locked into the bottle. But when you physically open the bottle, it will actually change the status of the NFT. So I think we will see these things coming in the future, in the next couple of months and years.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to hear more about this gin bottle, but no, I think what you guys are doing with NFCs, right, makes a ton of sense for so many things. I'm going to take this in a bit of a a different direction, which is, we work in the space of kind of higher end collectibles, right? Very valuable things. And blockchain actually adds a component of complexity, not only in the technological sense, but actually in the physical storage sense. Because once you put something on a blockchain, it's got to be there, right? And it's something we've wrestled with for years, especially when you fractionalize things, right? There's another component there, but I'll spare you that detail. But yeah, so the challenges are basically exactly what you're saying, right? The people need to know with 100% certainty that this thing is what you're saying it is. It's going to be there if I ask for it. To be clear, we do this in the vaulting sense. We're physically custodying these assets for them. And there's people that do that, right, in the traditional kind of auction house world. But once you allow it on a blockchain, these things can move around the world. They could go into a DeFi protocol. They could be used in a game. They could get lost in somebody's wallet, right? So there's a lot of considerations you have to take. And we've spent, the better part of 18 months here working on kind of like a standard system with regulators as well. And I'm not saying we want to regulate NFTs. That's definitely not what we're saying. But it's really regulating ourselves to make sure that people know for 100% certainty that like a stable coin, like a dollar, that this thing is actually there and it'll be wherever you want it to be when you want it there. And it's insured and there's capital requirements so that, if a fire happens, you're not screwed. So that's been one of the like major complexities in our particular world is just how do you solve for that immutability and like kind of things that have to live past me?
When it comes to keeping things tethered, and that's a good way of putting it, tethering is a big question. What we learned with blockchain and with NFTs, and a lesson we learn over and over and over as builders, is to try to avoid asking blockchains to do things that they aren't built to do. That usually ends in calamity. Blockchains are absolutely wonderful at being distributed ledgers of transactions and information. So when we think about putting physical items on the blockchain, the bridge or the tether of how you do that is absolutely critical, because if you start asking chains to do things they're not supposed to do and getting off the internet and into the real world, it's going to get problematic. To keep it simple, our approach was, well, how can we ask a blockchain to do what it already does, which is securely store metadata on a distributed ledger. So in our case, at Block Party, we partnered with an image recognition technology company to capture the object with your phone, not unlike the way that your phone captures your face to unlock itself, and then hash that information directly into the metadata of the NFT, of the contract. This way, whether, as Evan was talking about, whether the NFT makes its way into a DeFi protocol, into a decentralized exchange, whether it gets sent around the world a million times, the question is about compostability. So in a super high frequency environment of trading NFT, how do you preserve that data? Well, if the hash of the image is directly in the metadata of the NFT, then at that point we feel comfortable. We feel comfortable about it. That's our approach. There's probably 100 ways to skin that cat, but at the end of the day, I think the takeaway lesson for folks in the audience is when we think about these things, how can we ask these tasks to take place in a blockchain without asking the blockchain to do things that it's not supposed to do?
Yeah, so to me it comes back to that original idea of the Bitcoin white paper, where it's such a pure idea, and you can take that pure idea of ownership and manufacturing trust and apply it to all kinds of other digital goods, and that's what NFTs are. But then the moment you try to link that to something in the real world, that purity kind of starts to break down, and you have something that gets a bit more messy because the real world is messy. And I think that's okay. We just have to find ways in which we are okay with weakening that purity a little bit, be it through NFC tags, or other ways to link physical devices to this pure ethereal idea of the blockchain. And I think in the end, the right direction that I see for this is one where the physical devices become much more part of the computing machinery of the blockchain. Meaning, tags are sort of the first step to that, but make it a microcontroller that can do a little bit more. It has like a secure key on there. It can run code now you're talking about something really interesting. And the bottle opener closes 1 bit, right? Imagine doing something with a lot more bits. And I think that's where it gets really interesting.
So, Max, I'd like to dive a little bit more into what you're working on, and I was wondering if you could tell us about some of the potentials for future integrations of Web3 and wearables in particular.
Sure. Yeah. When we initially thought about this space, and we were really interested in creating dedicated devices for NFTs. When we say NFTs here, we're really mostly talking about visual art, and we wanted to create something. We looked at frames, we looked at wearables, looked at jewelry. This particular device is one that just came together because we had all the pieces around. We were really interested in taking it in sort of a dystopian cyberpunk aesthetic. So this is why it looks the way it looks. And that was something we were able to execute on. We made this limited series of 9 of them, and you can link it to your NFTs and show them. The future really is, that's one particular aesthetic, but there's way more you can do. You can create jewelry. You can build something that doesn't necessarily live in that aesthetic universe, but in different places. And then also, I think where it gets really interesting is where you start having the devices exhibit properties of the chain, really, where you have on-chain behavior of physical devices. I think we got to some of this already today, but that's where I think things are going.
Okay, perfect. Vlad, I know we've talked a bit about it, and I know that you have a background in traditional art world as well. But in the Web3 space, I tend to think that artist brand tends to be captured a lot more in the face and in the public. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that fact and this interplay of digital and physical goods based around an artist and their brand moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. My mind immediately goes to one of my favorite artists in the NFT space, Dave Krugman, who before NFTs was a photographer. He still is a photographer, actually. And photography is, in my opinion, the first digitally native art form. It took the form of two-dimensional prints because it had to. It wasn't 50 years ago since photography was considered fine art, but this is a natively digital art form, even back into the times of the darkroom. So Dave Krugman is famous for taking shots of like nighttime, dramatic film noir scenes with lots of rain and water. And these are things that do not show up well on if anybody here has ever printed a photograph, water and dark do not show up super well. But his work does show up super well in the digital format. So during Art Basel, we exhibited one of his famous shots both as an NFT and as a physical print that were side by side, and you can see that these are the same work but expressed differently, one in the digitally native format and one in the physical format. And I think for photographers, that's as well as collage artists, but photographers are, in terms of their brand, have a huge opportunity to explore the digitally native side of their art form while also not sacrificing the physical part of it that's been around for so long.
I know we're getting close on time, but I'm going to ask you two both one question as well. So, Evan, in this space, we see tons of collectibles projects, the 10,000K piece. And I was wondering, I really don't see them massively integrating into the traditional world. Where do you see that going, and how do you see that happening?
You're talking about the NFTs,
Well,
10,000.
How we see collectibles in the traditional world and collectibles in Web3, where do you see them integrating and, just in general with collectible products?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of answers there. I think the most important thing is, this is so obviously good for brands, for artists, for other people, right? You get the distribution's incredible. You get to interact with your fans more meaningfully, and you get a piece of a secondary market, right, in perpetuity that you never had access to before. I feel like the most important question is, how, like, the brands are going to benefit. It's everybody else. How do you make that meaningful experience for the collectors? Like, there's so many things you can do in addition to just, hey, here's this, right, and have it and be a fan. Like, there are far more meaningful ways, both economically, from a entertainment standpoint, and also from kind of a community and personal standpoint. So I think, like, that's where we're trying to work with our partners on focusing is, like, you're going to win on all the other kind of, like, merits. How do you keep this exciting? How do you grow this industry? So that's my 2 cents.
All right. And finally, Mike, I've worked a little bit with NFC chips on my own projects, and I was wondering what people should be expecting to see more from NFC chips in the future as far as innovations that can be coupled with the blockchain technology that they allow.
Right. I think what we're going to see in the future is a little bit something what Max already mentioned, that we're not just going to have simple NFC chips, but smart NFC chips. Microcontrollers are going to enter the blockchain, and it's actually the big chip manufacturers are already working on it, like Infineon and NXP, they're working on it already. It's just a matter of time and quantity. When we started this whole thing 3 years ago, it was just very expensive, and the chips couldn't do much. But after almost like 1 million chips implanted right now in physicals and NFTs, we see price drops, and we see like really development going into smart devices, smart physical devices that actually can create seed phrases, for example, and write to the blockchain directly. So this, I think there's a lot more to come, and I can't wait for it.
Well, I really wish we had more time because I have a lot more questions, but that's how panels go sometimes. So I really appreciate you all coming out. If everybody could give a round of applause to
Thank you,
guys.
Kat.
Kat, thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.